What if I told you that one of the most wanted men on the planet is sitting inside a fully armored compound right now, with marble floors, private garages, reinforced panic rooms, underground escape tunnels, and enough surveillance cameras to rival a Las Vegas casino? What if I told you that this man, with a $10 million bounty on his head, spends his nights in properties worth millions, surrounded by gold-plated weapons, luxury SUVs, and guards who would die before letting anyone get through the gate? And what if I told you that the US government has already identified those properties, sanctioned the businesses that fund them, and still can't catch him? Meet Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar, alias El Chapito, the eldest son of the most infamous drug lord who ever lived. The man who inherited not just his father's empire, but his father's taste for hiding in plain sight. Today, we are going inside his world. The compound in Tierra Blanca, Culiacán, a walled property on a private street with an underground tunnel connecting two houses, built specifically to vanish from military raids. The Lomas de Culiacán mansion, a two-story fortress with 10 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, a full gym, a tennis court, and a garage that swallows 4 SUVs, whole. The Tres Rios luxury residence, tucked inside one of Sinaloa's most exclusive private developments, with high-end finishes and security that blends seamlessly into the neighborhood around it. And then there's the real estate empire hidden behind front companies in Mazatlan, beachfront hospitality businesses, vertical construction projects, and a development company buying up prime Pacific Coast property with cartel cash. This is the story of Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar, the man who turned hiding into an art form and turned blood money into brick and mortar. Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar was born in 1983 in Sinaloa, Mexico. Some records say August 15th in Zapopan, Jalisco. Others say October 2nd in Culiacán itself. Even his birth date is disputed, which, honestly, is very on brand for a man whose entire existence is built around being impossible to pin down. His father was Joaquín Archivaldo Guzmán Loera, El Chapo. At the time of Iván's birth, El Chapo was already climbing the ranks of what would become the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the history of the Western Hemisphere, the Sinaloa cartel. His mother was Alejandrina Maria Salazar Hernández, El Chapo's first wife. She married him in 1977 in a small, quiet ceremony in Jesus Maria, Sinaloa, a town so small, so remote, that to the outside world it barely existed. But to the cartel, it was sacred ground. Iván grew up in a ranch home in Jesus Maria. On the surface, it looked like any other modest rancho in the Sinaloa mountains. But nothing about Iván's childhood was ordinary. While other kids in rural Sinaloa were learning to farm, Iván was learning something far more dangerous: how power actually works. His father, by the time Iván was a teenager, wasn't just a drug dealer. El Chapo was a billionaire, a Forbes-listed billionaire, a man with private jets, ranches in multiple states, beachfront mansions, underground tunnel networks, and the loyalty of an army. He had a zoo with jaguars and crocodiles at his Guadalajara hacienda. He had a ranch outside Culiacán with a resort-style pool and manicured gardens that looked like a 5-star hotel compound. And Iván watched all of it. He absorbed all of it. He and his brother Jesus Alfredo, also known as Alfredillo, were El Chapo's children from his first marriage. That made them the eldest of the Chapitos, the heirs apparent. According to Insight Crime, both brothers were introduced to the inner workings of the Sinaloa cartel as teenagers, brought into the fold personally by their father and his co-leader, the legendary Ismael El Mayo Zambada. By the time Iván was in his late teens, he wasn't just a cartel kid with a famous last name. He was an active participant in the family business. The question was never whether Iván would follow his father's path. The question was always how far he would go. When Iván was 21 years old, everything changed. In April 2004, Iván's name first surfaced in connection with a shocking case: the murder of Kristen Dayel, a young Canadian exchange student, and her Mexican companion, Cesar Augusto Pulido Mendoza. The case was never officially solved, but Iván's name was in the whispers. Then, in February 2005, police in Zapopan, the upscale suburb of Guadalajara, caught Iván sitting in a vehicle on a city street, waiting for a carload of associates. Officers had been watching. They moved in. Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar was arrested. He was 21 years old, El Chapo's son, in handcuffs, The government charged him with money laundering and threw him into Federal Social Rehabilitation Center Number 1, La Palma, one of Mexico's highest security federal prisons, the same prison system his father had escaped from. Inside, Iván was cold, literally. According to journalist Anabel Hernandez, who documented the cartel in extraordinary detail, Iván wrote to his father asking for warmer clothes. El Chapo reached out to prison guards to smuggle them in. The guards charged him $500,000, not because smuggling clothes cost that much, but because they knew who was asking, and they knew he could pay. That detail tells you everything about the world Iván grew up in. Even in prison, even as a young man in his early 20s, he was worth $500,000 in leverage just for a change of clothes. El Chapo made a move that very few fathers in any world would ever make. He reportedly gave up one of his own allies, Alfredo Beltran Leyva, to authorities in order to secure his son's freedom. A man betrayed so a young man could walk free. In April 2008, a federal judge ruled there was insufficient evidence that Iván's money came from drug trafficking, other than the fact that he was El Chapo's son. He walked out of prison. And he never went back. From that day forward, Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar made a decision. He was going to build something his father never quite managed. Not just a drug empire, a real estate empire. A web so complex, so layered, so buried under shell companies and front businesses and loyal associates that even the most powerful government on earth wouldn't be able to untangle it. He was going to learn from every one of his father's mistakes. But he was also going to keep the lifestyle. After his release in 2008, Iván went all in. By 2012, the United States Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, formally designated Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act. He was officially named a lieutenant of El Chapo. That meant every asset he held, every account he touched, every company he breathed on, was now under the legal crosshairs of the U.S. government. Most people, when told the U.S. Treasury has put you on a list alongside international terrorists and drug lords, go quiet, go invisible, go off the grid entirely. Iván did the opposite. He got on Instagram, he got on Facebook, he got on Twitter, now X, and he posted. He posted photos of supercars, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, custom-painted trucks worth more than most people's houses. He posted photos of gold-plated pistols engraved with elaborate designs, sitting in his hand like they were jewelry. He posted videos of private jets, of Las Vegas boxing matches, of beach parties with bottles of Moet Chandon in each hand, and women in designer clothes on either side. He blurred the faces in the photos, his and those of the people around him. That was the only concession to secrecy. Everything else was a neon sign pointing directly at who he was and what he had. A security analyst named Raul Benitez told the Associated Press Iván Archivaldo was, I believe, a bit crazy. He spent all his time posting things on Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter. A serious narco doesn't do that. But here's the thing that most people miss when they look at those posts. The cars and the parties were just the surface. Underneath that flashy exterior, something much more sophisticated was being built. While Iván was posting photos for 220,000 Instagram followers, his associates were buying property. While he was flying to Vegas for fights, his trusted financial operators were setting up construction companies along Mexico's Pacific coast. While he was sipping champagne in hot tubs, an entire parallel financial universe was being assembled. One in which every brick of real estate was separated from his name by 3 or 4 layers of legal insulation. His father had used mansions and ranches. Iván used front companies and hospitality businesses. His father's name was on deeds. Iván's name appeared nowhere. That was the evolution. That was the upgrade. And it worked. For years, it worked. Now let's talk about the real estate, because this is what this video is really about. You have to understand something first. When law enforcement talks about Iván's properties, they aren't talking about a single mansion with a gold-plated front gate that he poses in front of for Instagram. What they're describing is a network, a rotation, a chessboard of safe houses, each prepared in advance, each with its own security layer and its own escape plan. He learned this from his father. El Chapo never stayed anywhere too long. But he also never stayed anywhere unprepared. Let's start with the one that made international headlines in February 2025. The Tierra Blanca neighborhood sits in the northern reaches of Culiacán. It is a residential area, The kind of place where you'd expect families and small businesses, not cartel command centers. That's the point. Ivan's properties don't look like what you imagine when you picture a drug lord's house. They look normal. Deliberately, strategically normal on the outside. The property where Ivan was reportedly staying on February 19, 2025, was located on a private street called Artesanos, positioned between two avenues in a way that gave it multiple exit vectors. What made this property worth millions in operational value wasn't the square footage, it was what was built underneath it. A clandestine tunnel, running beneath the house, connecting it to a second neighboring property on the same block. Underground. Reinforced. Complete enough that a man could move through it quickly in the middle of a military operation without being seen. The Wall Street Journal confirmed that when Mexican special forces raided what they believed was Ivan's location, they found evidence of his presence: food, personal items, security equipment, but Iván was already gone. According to journalist Jose Luis Montenegro, who says he has sources inside the Los Chapitos organization, Iván Archivaldo escaped through that tunnel. Just like his father escaped from maximum security prison in 2015 through a tunnel running under a shower floor for more than a mile. That tunnel at La Palma had lighting, ventilation, a modified motorcycle on rails. The tunnel in Tierra Blanca had something simpler but equally effective: a second door in a second house, and a man who was already 2 streets away before the soldiers reached the front gate. At the time of the raid, Ivan's own security chief, Kevin Alonso Gil Acosta, known as L200, was arrested. So was his financial operator, 4 of his top men taken in one night, and Iván gone. Into the tunnel, into the dark. The property, according to analysts who track cartel real estate, would have been worth somewhere between $800,000 and $1.5 million in the Culiacan market. But its true value was its function. Underground passage connecting 2 structures, walled perimeter, private street with limited approach angles, multiple vehicles on standby. It wasn't a home, it was an operational base wearing a home as a disguise. Now let's go to the property that the Chapitos used during the infamous Culiacanazo of October 2019. This is where Ovidio, Ivan's half-brother, was briefly detained and where the Mexican government famously released him after cartel gunmen turned the entire city of Culiacan into a war zone. The property is located inside the Lomas de Culiacan private development. It is the kind of address that, in any other city in the world, would belong to a tech executive or a celebrity. A 2-story residence sitting on approximately 2,000 square meters of land, that is, nearly half an acre, in the middle of a city, enclosed and private. The house itself spans around 1,000 square meters of built space. Inside, 10 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, a fully equipped gym, a tennis court, a swimming pool, and a garage large enough to shelter 4 full-size vehicles simultaneously. Investigative reporting from El Tiempo and Infobay described the design as modern, clean lines, contemporary architecture, the kind of space a sophisticated person with serious money would occupy. High ceilings, large windows designed to flood the interior with light, the kind of finishes you'd see in a luxury development in Mexico City or Guadalajara. Market value for a property of this specification in a private Culiacan development, conservatively between $2 million and $3.5 million US. But again, the real value wasn't the tennis court. It was what no real estate listing would ever advertise: an escape tunnel running from the inner parking area of the compound to outside the perimeter walls. A hidden exit. A ghost door. When the military came for Ovidio that night, they found the tunnel. But Ovidio hadn't made it there in time. He was captured inside. The difference between freedom and a Chicago federal prison was a matter of 30 seconds and a locked door. Iván never makes that mistake. Iván is already moving before the helicopters arrive. The third property category, linked to the Chapitos and to Iván specifically through family and operational networks, is inside the Tres Rios development in Greater Culiacan. This is perhaps the most revealing of all because Tres Rios isn't a narco neighborhood. It is literally described as the second most important urban development in the entire state of Sinaloa, behind only the capital itself. Tres Rios sits at the confluence of 3 rivers, the Humaya, the Tamazula, and a 3rd tributary. It is an upscale planned urban development. Think gated community with manicured streets, modern commercial spaces, restaurants, and private residences that blend seamlessly into the city's legitimate upper-class landscape. Properties inside Tres Rios are designed for people with money who want privacy without looking suspicious. Luxury finishes, multiple garage spaces for up to 4 vehicles per home, 2 to 3-story construction. Most units have spacious living areas, high-end kitchens, and the kind of neutral luxury aesthetic that says money without saying crime. No one on that block is going to call the police because a neighbor drives a nice truck. The camouflage is the neighborhood itself. Intelligence sources have linked Los Chapitos to multiple properties in developments like Tres Rios across the Culiacan area. Iván doesn't live in one. He cycles through several. He stays here a week, there a month, somewhere else entirely when the pressure gets too heavy. His lookouts, called halcones or hawks, are positioned throughout every neighborhood he operates in. Residents who see unusual activity and say nothing. People who watch the streets for military convoys or unmarked vehicles and send a single message to a single contact who sends it upward through the chain. By the time any operation begins, Iván knows it is coming. Now let's pull back the curtain on the financial machine that funds all of it. Because here is the wildest part of this entire story. The houses, the compounds, the tunnels, those are just where Iván sleeps. The real estate empire is something else entirely. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control dropped a bombshell. They sanctioned not just Iván Archivaldo and his brother Alfredo directly, they went after an entire network of front companies and associates operating out of Mazatlan, the famous Pacific Coast resort city on the Sinaloa coast. At the center of that Mazatlan network was a man named José Raúl Núñez Rios. Treasury documents described Núñez Rios as a close associate of both Iván and the Los Chapitos Plaza boss in Mazatlan. And they described something extraordinary. Beginning around 2021, Núñez Rios appeared to become wealthy in a very short period of time. Almost overnight, he began purchasing properties and establishing companies across multiple industries, all in Mazatlan and along the broader Pacific coastline. The company at the center of the real estate operation, Inmobiliaria 247, officially described as an emerging real estate developer, focused on vertical construction in tourist zones along Mexico's Pacific coast. On its Instagram, before the account went dark in late 2023, it promoted itself as a sleek, modern property development firm, the kind of company that sells beachfront condos to wealthy buyers. What it was actually doing, according to OFAC, purchasing and managing front properties for the Los Chapitos criminal organization, laundering fentanyl proceeds through bricks and mortar, taking cash that moved through the Sinaloa cartel's distribution networks in the United States and transforming it, legally on paper, into real estate assets along one of Mexico's most desirable coastlines. Think about what that means. Every gram of fentanyl crossing the US border generated money. That money traveled south, it passed through financial layers. It landed inside companies like Inmobiliaria 247, and it came out the other side as a beachfront property in Mazatlan, clean, legally titled, generating rental income, appreciating in value, an asset that could be sold, leveraged, or used as collateral. Núñez Rios' wife, Sheila Paola Urias Vasquez, was listed as the official owner of multiple associated businesses, including Carpe Diem Spa, Siwa Beach Club, and Mue Renta y Venta de Vestidos, a formal dress rental company with more than 16,000 Instagram followers that even participated in the 2025 Mazatlan International Carnival, a beachside spa, a beach club, a dress rental boutique at the carnival, all of it sanctioned by the United States government, all of it described in Treasury documents as part of a financial network designed to fund the Los Chapitos war machine and clean cartel cash. That's 10 businesses, sanctioned in a single action. And those are just the ones the US government was willing to publicly name. Mazatlan is not an accident as a location. The city has been booming. Tourism revenue, new infrastructure, international investment, property values rising. Lots of new money coming in from lots of different directions. The perfect environment to wash dirty cash through construction. And hospitality. Nobody asks too many questions when everyone is getting rich. Iván doesn't own any of this in his name. His name appears on nothing, but the money flows from his operation through trusted associates into companies that build and buy real estate that funds his next move. The spider at the center of the web. Invisible, but the web is everywhere. In August 2024, something remarkable happened. Or, depending on who you believe, something remarkable almost happened. Reports emerged that Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar had been captured. Mexican military personnel reportedly arrested him on the outskirts of Culiacan on the evening of August 29th. Major news outlets ran with it. It seemed like a turning point. The most wanted man in Mexico, finally in handcuffs. Then the story got complicated. The reports were never officially confirmed. The Mexican government did not parade Iván before cameras. He did not appear in a courtroom. He did not surface in U.S. custody. And a month later, whispers that if he had been detained at all, he had been released. Or perhaps he had never been detained at all, and the report was misinformation, deliberately planted perhaps to test his enemies' reactions, to see who celebrated, to identify who was waiting for him to fall. In a world where information itself is a weapon, even reports of a cartel leader's arrest can be a chess move. 4 of his top men arrested in a single night. His security chief, L-200, his financial operator, El Guerrito, the man who allegedly ran all the logistics behind Los Chapitos fentanyl routes to the United States. Gone. In custody. Loaded onto military aircraft and flown to Mexico City. And Iván? Into the tunnel. Gone again. Journalist Luis Chaparro reported that Iván was in the company of a man called L9, described as one of his closest personal bodyguards, when the operation went down. According to cartel sources speaking to multiple journalists, Iván may have been injured during the escape. One source described him as being in a nervous crisis, rattled not just by the military pressure, but by the fact that one of his own men, El Guerrito, was believed to have given up his location under interrogation. That is the nightmare scenario in the narco world. You can survive military raids, you can escape through tunnels, you can lose properties and rebuild them. What you cannot easily recover from is a trusted person inside your circle talking to the enemy. It is the thing that got El Chapo himself, in the end. Informants. People who knew the locations and the routines and decided the DEA's money was worth more than loyalty. And now it appears the same pressure is being applied to Iván. The Mexican government officially denied that Iván escaped through a narcotueln from Tierra Blanca. The Secretary of Security, Omar Garcia Harfuch, told reporters directly, yes, the objectives were very clear. He implied the operation hit exactly what it was supposed to hit, the associates, and that Iván was not the specific target that night. Maybe. Or maybe that is what you say when the most wanted man on the continent just slipped through your fingers via an underground passage in a residential neighborhood. Nobody really knows, and that uncertainty, that cloud of conflicting reports and competing narratives and unverifiable facts, is exactly the environment Iván has always operated best in. Chasing smoke, as they say in Sinaloa. You can see it. You know there was fire. But by the time you get there, it's already gone. Here's one of the wildest facts about Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar. Of the 4 Chapitos, the 4 sons of El Chapo, who took over the Sinaloa cartel, he is the last one still free and still in power. His half-brother Ovidio was captured in January 2023, extradited to the United States in September of that year, and by July 2025 had pleaded guilty to drug trafficking charges in a Chicago federal court. He is awaiting sentencing. His half-brother Joaquin Guzman Lopez was arrested in July 2024, reportedly after betraying El Mayo Zambada himself, tricking the elderly cartel co-founder into boarding a private plane that landed in Texas with DEA agents waiting. Even the betrayal was dramatic. Even the arrest was theater. Joaquin is now in U.S. federal custody, cooperating with prosecutors. His full brother Alfredillo, remains at large, alongside Iván. But Iván is the senior partner. Iván is the one the U.S. government has placed at the apex of the Los Chapitos operation. Iván is the one with a $10 million bounty, the one who, alongside Alfredo, commands a combined $20 million reward from the U.S. State Department, the largest bounties currently active in the Western Hemisphere for drug trafficking fugitives. And yet, he is still out there, in a world where his father, arguably the most infamous drug lord of the 20th century, was caught twice, escaped twice, and is now serving life in ADX Florence, the most secure prison in the United States, even has survived. More than survived, he has adapted, regrouped, and continued to command one of the most powerful criminal organizations on Earth from inside a network of safe houses that law enforcement is still mapping. The Sinaloa cartel, even in its current fractured state, split between the Chapitos faction and the rival Maiza faction loyal to El Mayo's people, is still responsible for the majority of fentanyl entering the United States. Every counterfeit pill, every overdose death, every grieving family in Ohio or Georgia or California. There is a line that runs from that tragedy directly to the compounds in Culiacan to the tunnel beneath the private street in Tierra Blanca. How does Iván maintain it? First, the rotation. He never stays in the same property too long. The network of safe houses we've described, Tierra Blanca, Lomas de Culiacan, Tres Rios, the ranches in the mountains around Jesus Maria, none of them are permanent residences. They are nodes in a system. Iván moves between them on a schedule that only he and his most trusted inner circle know. Second, the halcones. Lookouts embedded in every neighborhood he frequents. Regular residents, often paid in cash, sometimes under threat, who monitor street activity and report anything unusual. Unusual vehicles, strangers who ask questions, helicopter patterns. A military convoy 3 miles out triggers a message, which triggers a counter-message which tells Iván exactly how much time he has to move. In February 2025, that system may have only given him minutes. He used every one of them. Third, the financial insulation. His name is on nothing. Every property, every company, every peso of real estate is held through associates, wives of associates, nominees, shell corporations, and legitimate-seeming businesses. To prosecute Iván on real estate grounds alone, authorities would need to prove, in court, that Inmobiliaria 247 received his money, that Núñez Rios was acting on his instructions, and that the properties purchased were done so with the specific intent to launder cartel proceeds. The U.S. Treasury can sanction those entities. Destroying them legally is another matter. And in Mexico, where cartel money has historically flowed into judicial systems alongside public infrastructure, untangling any of it is extraordinarily difficult. Fourth, and this is the part nobody talks about, Iván has something his father lost. He has the loyalty of communities. In parts of Sinaloa, Los Chapitos are not universally despised. They are feared, yes, but they are also present in ways the government is not. Roads in rural areas, medical bills paid for by narco charity, small businesses that survive because the cartel allows them to. That social fabric is part of the security architecture. When Iván moves through a neighborhood, he has not just armed guards, he has eyes, sympathies, silence. El Chapo built that same social network over decades. Iván inherited it and has worked to maintain it. Right now, as of 2026, Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar is believed to be somewhere in the mountains or urban core of Sinaloa. The Sinaloa War, the brutal internal conflict between Los Chapitos and the Maiza faction, has been grinding for months. Over 600 people killed since September 2024. Culiacan itself turned into a battlefield at times, with checkpoints, gunfights, and car bombs. Even in the middle of an internal war, Iván is operating, planning, surviving. The last Chapito who matters, the one who slipped through the tunnel, the one no camera has ever clearly captured, the one whose fortune is scattered across beachfront developments and armored compounds and underground corridors, and businesses that look, from the outside, like anyone else's dream. He is the ghost his father never quite became. Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar was born into a dynasty of power and blood, raised in ranches and shadows, arrested as a young man, freed by a father who would sacrifice anything for his children, and released into a world that had already shaped him into something his captors didn't fully understand. He took that world and built something new. Not just a drug empire, a real estate empire. A shadow corporation that wears the face of construction companies and beach clubs and dress rental boutiques on the Sinaloa Pacific coast. His hideouts are not just houses, they are architectural statements about survival. Tunnel systems that say, "I knew you were coming before you did." Security networks that say, "You will always be 3 steps behind me." Front companies that say, "You can sanction the name, but you can't find the money." His father ended up on a mattress on a prison floor in Colorado, serving life plus 30 years cut off from the world he built. Iván watched that too. And so far, he is still watching, still moving, still out there somewhere between the mountains and the coast, in a compound that doesn't exist in any public record, in a city that looks normal from the outside and hides everything on the inside. Subscribe to Inform Secreto to continue exploring the hidden stories behind power. Real stories told unfiltered, because what you don't see also controls the world.